Now, as we mentioned before, French President Emmanuel Macron is set for a second term on his presidency. Now, we're going to talk about this with our French ambassador to Indonesia, and we have adhered our health protocols here in the studio, Rory and I, and also Mr. Ambassador. So we would like to take off our masks so that our discussion will be more fruitful and more relaxed.
Yeah.
So
we'd like to ask your permission, our audience, to take off our mask. And we are so delighted and very honored to have you, Mr. Ambassador, His Excellency Olivier Chambard. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name.
No, it was perfect.
It's perfect, so
Olivier
thank you very much. French Ambassador to Indonesia. So he's going to talk about what new policies to expect from Macron's second term and the consequences of the conflict in Ukraine that we're still having today. So how are you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. And saya senang sekali bisa bertemu dengan Bapak dan Ibu.
Bienvenue, Ambassador, Monsieur Ambassador. I mean, you match our studio blue. I hope you like See Today's studio.
Fantastic, very good, very nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So we've got lots of questions about you. We're going to be discussing about, of course, the result of the election and as well as Indonesian and also French relationship. And we're going to talk about what Indonesians think very important to Indonesian, which is a Muslim majority country, which is about hijab and also veil. But let us start off with the Macron's second term that will take the helm for another 5 years. Can you outline the policies for Mr. Macron's second term?
Well, the presidential elections took place in a very special times, troubled times, with the war in Ukraine, the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and also all the questions about the future of Europe. And President Macron, as a true European, made a lot of initiatives, delivered a lot of initiatives about Europe and France in Europe. The objective of President Macron with Europe, and as you know, France is holding the presidency of the European Union for the first 6 months of this year, is to strengthen the economic growth of Europe, to strengthen also the sovereignty of Europe, and at the same time to make Europe more closer to its citizen by trying to find ways of listening more to the European citizens, and at the same time preserving the security of Europeans, whether it's security in terms of defense, economy, but also the fight against climate change, because it's one of the biggest threats which is just before us.
Right. Well, that's great to hear. So, I mean, from the EU themselves, they are very happy to hear and to know that Mr. Macron is elected for the second time. Ursula von der Leyen herself saying that we're going to look forward in, extending our cooperation, collaboration. And how do you see the French economy today? I mean, it's the pandemic. There's also this Russian aggression, as you mentioned, and many countries are trying to phase out from the dependency of energy from Russia. So can you explain how is the situation right now?
Well, the French economy, as all economies in the world, have been severely affected by the pandemic. But the French system was able to help the people, the shopkeepers, the small and medium industries, the big industries, to face the challenge of this pandemic with the confinement. So the resilience of the French economy was quite good during those 2 years. Of course, the last wave of Omicron had an effect on the rebound of the French economy, which is going to be a little less than expected. And of course, now the war in Ukraine is also a challenge. It's of course a strategic security challenge, but it's also an economic challenge. And we are facing it in Europe with a very united way, politically and economically. And I think the beginning of Mr. Macron's presidency will be very much focused on that. The strategic problems in Europe, and of course also the economic rebound like President Jokowi said, recover together, recover stronger. That's you can apply that not only to G20 but everywhere in the world.
That's
Okay,
right.
so it's going to be interesting as well to talk about the presidency, second-term presidency, from the political perspective. You know that the opponent, Marine Le Pen, was also a right-wing, prominent politician in France, and she, if she won, but then she failed. If she won, she said that she would cut taxes, and then she would ban hijab and even fail, and also tighten the immigration policies. What makes Mr. Macron's policies later on in the second term different to Le Pen's policies, sir?
Well, first, President Macron cut taxes during his first term. So it's to cut tax. It's very easy to put that in a political program. Now you have to do that in accordance to the economy, the social context, and that's what President Macron did during the first term. And certainly the question of tax is a very sensitive thing in France, but I'm sure it's the same here or everywhere in the world. So certainly the tax policy is something which President Macron will deal with in the same way he did during the first term, not increasing taxes. For that, you need to have a bigger growth. So that's the core issue. You mentioned the problem of hijab and what Mrs. Le Pen would have done. I don't know. She's not president, so there's no point of remaking history. But I'm glad you touch this subject, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions in Indonesia about the situation of hijab in France. It's perfectly all right to wear a veil in the street. There's no problem. Of course, not the burqa. But the veil is, you have a lot of women who are wearing the veils. I must say that Islam is the second religion in France. So it concerns a lot of people. And you have a lot of Muslim women who are wearing the veil. The only place where the veil is not allowed is at school and in public service. Why is it the case? It's not a discrimination towards Muslim. It's linked to our secular system, which dates back from the 19th century, at a time where the political change was to separate religion from politics. And at the time, the religion was not Islam, of course. It was the Christian, Catholic religion. So the idea, this philosophy, is that no religion should be the religion of the state. No religion should be the primary religion. All religions are on the same footing in France. So you don't, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, you don't wear, when you're at school and when you're a civil servant doing your job, you don't wear distinctive sign of your own religion.
Right. So France is, we have to say that it's one of the most favorable countries, favorite destinations of Indonesians.
I actually went there for baby moon.
And Indonesians love, France fashion, food, coffee, everything about France, even the language. So it's going to be quite disappointing for Indonesians if hijab is then banned there. But as you mentioned,
there's no question of that.
Yeah, there's no question.
There was some talks by a candidate who lost.
So it is not banned. So it is not banned, but it is not allowed for those who go to school or work in public service.
Yes, but it's a tiny fraction, and the reason, as I said, is very important. It's not just we don't want to have the veil. It's not the veil in particular. It's distinctive religious signs, whether it's the veil, the kippah for the Jewish boys, or a huge cross for the Christian.
Does this also go for university students, for example?
No, it's just the school.
The school.
Just the school.
Okay, now, as you mentioned...
So please, the Indonesian women who are wearing veil can come to France, and there will be absolutely no problem.
All right, so I mean, it's a great relief. And so we want to look forward as well about the relationship of France and Asian countries, most especially to Indonesia. We know that ASEAN countries, most of them are, France have been also eyewitnessing how we have grown. And so we want to know, do you have any, is the France administration right now have any specific long-term goals with ASEAN and with Indonesia?
Yes, absolutely. France recognizes the centrality of ASEAN. And as you know, France has developed, it was the first European country to do so, an Indo-Pacific strategy, which is based firstly on the fact that we are an Indo-Pacific nation. We have territories in the Indian Ocean, we have territories in the Pacific with New Caledonia and French Polynesia. So for us, it's not a policy looking at a faraway region. We are part of the region, economically, militarily, with the people, the French people who are living there, nearly 2 million French people in the Indo-Pacific. So Indo-Pacific, the Indo-Pacific strategy was developed in 2018 by President Macron to have a more coherent approach of this region, which is very important for us and for the world. And this region is a fundamental region for economic relations, for the navigation, and for economic, human, industrial development. And in this region, Indonesia is one of our main priorities. Indonesia is a strategic partner of France, and even though the pandemic has slowed down the number of visits, we managed to have a certain number of very important visits to Indonesia, the Sea Minister, the Trade Minister, and more importantly, the Foreign Minister and the Defense Minister, who signed agreements, and particularly the Foreign Minister, to deepen our strategic partnership. So I think now we are entering a new phase in the Franco-Indonesian relations, which is based on the fact that we share a lot of values. Of course, democracy, it's clear. But we are champions of multilateralism, both France and Indonesia. And that's very important. In a way, multilateralism is the new non-alignment of today. It's different, but it's the fact that the rule of law among nations should prevail.
All right.
And France and Indonesia are two champions of that.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to dig in deeper into Indonesian and France economic cooperation. How do you describe the cooperation of Indonesia and France in terms of economic? We can see that there are a lot of French companies in Indonesia and the economic ties is strong, but in your opinion, how is the relationship so far?
You said it. We have already strong ties. We have more than 200 French companies working in Indonesia, employing more than 50,000 Indonesian workers. And a lot of the French companies are not just trading with Indonesia. They are based in Indonesia and producing locally goods for Indonesians and even goods for the region, so contributing to the trade balance of Indonesia. But if you look at the figures, the margin of improvement is huge. We cannot just stay at this level for the moment. So we have a lot of possibilities in terms of infrastructure. A French company will build some data centers in Indonesia. You have satellites and also on renewable energy, which is something very important in France. We have a very advanced technology, and we are working with Indonesian companies, Indonesian government to do more in that sector. But the field, the scope of the possibilities with Indonesia is tremendous. So we have to do more. We have a strong position, but we can really do more.
What about in culture department? Do you have any something new, maybe in the future?
Well, during the visit of our foreign minister, it was decided to double the number of scholarships given by the French government to allow Indonesian students to come to France. And of course, it's not enough, and we are working in close cooperation with Indonesian universities who have also scholarships to help Indonesians to come to France. And I'd like to say, because sometimes Indonesians think, well, I'd like to go to France for my studies, but I'm not speaking French. It will take a long time. Well, they can learn French, or they can start to learn French, but you can go to France to make your studies in English. And in the meantime, you will learn French, of course. So I think it's very important. Don't be frightened by the language. You will master it at the end, but you can do a lot of things in English in France.
Because for us Indonesians, we feel like it's very nice, it's very comfortable if we go to France and we are able to speak the language, especially for university students or for you to pursue education there. So I mean, if you have that kind of program, that would be very helpful as well for us, because to learn French, it's not as easy for you to learn Indonesian, for example.
It's one of the most difficult languages in the world.
Right.
But you know, talking about that, would that be a reciprocal partnership when it comes to language learning and also teaching? For example, we have that with Australia. Australia teaches Bahasa Indonesia or Indonesian language in their schools. Would that be possible for French schools to teach Indonesian language at home?
Yeah, but I must say that saya sudah belajar bahasa Indonesia di Paris.
How long did you learn Bahasa Indonesia, Pak?
35 tahun yang lalu. Oh, saya lupa. No, but you can learn Indonesian in France, in Paris, of course, but not only in Paris. You have centers in university where you can learn Indonesian language. So that's quite.
But would that
easy.
be made into extracurricular activity? Learning foreign language, one of which is Indonesian language. Would that be possible to be put into extracurricular activities in school, for example?
In school, it's a different matter. It's going to be more difficult. We have to have teachers and all that. And extracurricular activity in schools, not in universities. You have to have a great demand. So for the moment...
This is for the public schools.
No. But I think we have to be realistic, and we have to do more at the university level. But any Frenchman who's living in France and going to university can learn Bahasa Indonesia, not in all cities, but in the main cities.
All right. So we're also interested in talking about tourism, because we know that the restrictions for COVID-19 is now easing up, and now people are wanting to travel. So is there any cooperation? Is there any deal regarding tourism between France and Indonesia? Because we know Indonesians love to visit France, love to have pictures with the Eiffel Tower, for example. What about you coming to our country? Is there anything that you've been talking about?
Before COVID, we had around 300,000 French people coming to Indonesia each year. And the special thing about the French tourists is that they're not staying just in Bali. They are visiting the whole country. And I think that's one of the challenges of Indonesia, to try to put people, of course, in Bali, but not only in Bali. Indonesia is such a big and fantastic country that you have to visit. And, well, Indonesia and France are two very nice and big touristic countries. So we are clearly willing to work together to exchange good practices and to bring more Indonesian in.
But for our views, from your perspective, other than Bali, which destinations would be French favorites? French people's favorites. Is it the more
to mention the main? But you have a lot. They have to go to Yogyakarta to visit Borobudur and Prambanan. They have to go to Toraja country. They have to go to Sumatra. They have to go to Kalimantan, the Moluccas, Raja Ampat, Flores, Labuan Bajo. Well, we can stay an hour listing, But I mean, the French tourists are interested in knowing the country. Just staying in a hotel and going to the beach is okay for just a few days, but so you can attract more French and everywhere in Indonesia.
Right. I'd like to move on to the presidency that France is currently holds, the EU presidency, while Indonesia holds the G20 presidency. How the two countries, in your opinion, could cooperate to face global challenges, commodity shortages, soaring prices of commodities as well, climate change, and prolonged conflict in the EU?
Yes, well, since the beginning, the French government, and in particular the French president, expressed to the Indonesian government and President Jokowi French readiness to work together, and that's what we did since the beginning of the G20 Indonesian presidency, to talk about how we can cooperate to make your presidency a success. Of course, the situation has changed in February with the aggression made by Russia on a sovereign country, Ukraine, with all the strategic, political and economic consequences which are affecting, of course, the G20, because G20 is an economic body, but the consequences of the Russian aggression are also economic. It's not just a question of a military question, it's also an economic one. So we are talking, we are in close cooperation with the Indonesian authorities, and you mentioned the food crisis which is looming. There's an initiative which is supported by France, the Farm Initiative, to help the countries which could be affected, and some very, very seriously, by the shortage of cereals, of oil, and we have to put all our efforts together. Indonesia as president of G20, France, but all the countries to overcome the situation. It's not going to be business as usual because Russia has decided otherwise. But the great show of unity of all the democracies to condemn what Russia did is, I think, in terms of the respect of the values and to show a united front is quite important nowadays, I think.
Right. So talking about the crisis, Ale, let me jump into this. So about G20, we're going to have the G20 meeting in October in Bali, and Indonesia is
November, in fact.
November, and Indonesia is the host and also the president for the presidency. And Indonesia has made its stance to invite Putin, both countries to Bali, Putin and Zelensky. How France take on this? America has said that it would consider to not attend the meeting if Putin is there. But what about France? Considering the unity and the sense of, reunite these two conflicting countries. What's the stance of France?
It's a bit early to answer, because a lot of things could happen between now and November. But certainly we welcome the initiative of President Jokowi to invite President Zelensky to the G20. It's the privilege of the president of G20 to invite other countries, and I think President Jokowi did a good job in inviting President Zelensky. Now, it's difficult to say how it will develop between now and November. So it would be a bit foolish to say, it will be like that and people will come or not come. We will have to see, will President Putin come or not? It's difficult to say now.
Well, would France support the discussion to find solution between Putin and also Zelensky, moderated by Indonesia as the president and also the members of G20 in Bali, if that's possible?
Well, France is supporting everything that could end this war, but not at all price. To end the war in a way that respects Ukrainian sovereignty, rights, and not by having the Russian way in this crisis. So clearly, President Macron is talking with President Putin regularly. The channels are opened, and of course, negotiation is very important. But to say now what's going to be the situation in November is a bit difficult. And we have to see how things evolve. The only thing which is certain that France will always be in close contact with Indonesia to help Indonesia, because it's not just a question of Indonesian presidency, it's the whole G20, which is enduring the effect of the Russian aggression. So we have to find a way together, and our presidents are really quite keen on working together.
All right, well, we'll look forward to that and we'll see how it goes. Now, the last question from us is that, how do you see the contribution of C today? This is a news channel that not only aims the Indonesian viewers, but also international viewers, and also other media to contribute in the development of industry, maybe from your perspective, sir.
Well, I discovered your network not very long ago, and I was impressed by the professionalism. I think it's very important to have new networks like yours. It shows the dynamism of the Indonesian journalist scene. And in a time where being a journalist is not that easy, because with social networks, with challenges by every corner of the society, I think it's very important to have very active social networks, but it's also very important to have networks like yours with professional journalists who are doing a job to check the information and to analyze. And I think it's a very good sign in a democracy to have a C as a newcomer, not so new, but a bit new.
Yeah. About a year.
I think it's a very good thing, and I'm very happy to be invited here.
All right.
Merci, thank you so much for being here. I mean, it's a great honor for us as well.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih banyak, Pak Ambassador. So that's our discussion, a very fruitful one with the Ambassador of France to Indonesia, Mr. Olivier Chambard. So thank you very much once again for your time, and also for the privilege that we have for having you right here.
That's right. All right, so don't go anywhere yet, because we're going to be back after the first quick break. And when we come back, we have the latest from Southeast Asia and around the world.
So please stay with us right here on the 3-Hour News Show on C3.